23. School education. Objectives. Universal access and retention. 100% enrollment and retention at elementary education and secondary education levels, achieve zero dropouts until class 10. Equitable participation by all society segments, in terms of attendance, retention and years of schooling to ensure maximum social inclusion. Improvement in learning outcomes for elementary and secondary education, as measured by successive rounds of the National Achievement Survey, NAS. Creating a robust framework for tracking individual students across their schooling years that incorporates data on their learning outcomes. Providing a real and viable alternative path for vocational education starting at higher levels to improve employability. Strengthening support for children as part of the school curriculum to improve child mental health. Current situation. The enrollment ratios for the elementary level are close to 100%. In addition, the gross enrollment ratios (GER) for secondary education have also increased, even though the net enrollment ratio (NIR) is still low. Moreover, data shows enrollment is largely similar across gender and castes. The ASER surveys estimate that national attendance in primary and upper primary schools is 71.4% and 73.2% respectively, with considerable differences across states. The retention rates in elementary school are 70.7%. The retention rates amongst scheduled tribes, STs, is 50.1%. The learning outcomes of those enrolled in the schooling system need improvement. The previous NAS conducted by National Council for Educational Research and Training, NCERT, reports that over 60% of grade V students scored below 50% across subjects. Findings by an independent ASER household level survey, 2016, in rural areas shows that among grade V children, only 47.8% could read grade 2 level text and only 26% could do grade V level arithmetic. Despite increasing access, enrollment in government primary schools declined by 2.31 crores in absolute numbers from 2007-08 to 2015-16, while enrollment in private primary schools increased by 1.45 crores over the same period. The reasons for the move from public to private schools is the perception of better quality of education provided by private schools amongst parents, which is also borne out from data by ASER over the years, and growth in private schools having affordable fees. The government has already made significant efforts towards addressing the issue of poor learning outcomes. Recent changes by the government include the introduction of a new and comprehensive National Achievement Survey. The Ministry of Human Resource Development has also spelled out the competencies and learning levels at different grades on which school grading will be based. In 2016-17, 4,790 vocational training schools across India were approved for providing vocational education at the secondary level. Of these, 3,662 schools are implementing the scheme. Finally, the mental pressure on students, especially in secondary education, has been increasing. Data from the National Crime Records Bureau shows that student suicides have increased from about 6,600 in 2012 to about 9,000 in 2015, many of these because of stress related to examinations and careers. Thus, there is a need to reduce the mental stress students suffer from. Constraints. Inadequate public funding in the sector. Disproportionate focus on school infrastructure as opposed to learning outcomes. Challenges in governance and monitoring mechanisms for learning outcomes. Accountability systems in government schools. Inadequate teacher training, large number of teaching vacancies and rampant absenteeism. Limited options for vocational education in the school system. Inadequate support and counseling given to children in schools. Way forward. 1. Education sector funding by government. Government spending on education as a whole, not just school education, should be increased to at least 6% of GDP by 2022. At present, allocations to the education sector by the center and states remains close to 3% of GDP, while according to the World Bank, the world average in this regard is 4.7% of GDP. 2. Revamped governance system to improve monitoring and accountability. State governments should develop and formulate robust mechanisms to enforce regulations on teacher qualifications, teacher absenteeism and learning outcomes. Learning outcomes should be regularly assessed by bodies independent of the line ministries. 3. Gearing the system towards learning outcomes. Rationalize public school structure. School integration or clubbing of small schools, i.e. those with very low enrollment, see table 23.1 below, could result in additional human, financial and infrastructure resources. States like Rajasthan have already initiated school integration programs along with improved transport facilities for sparsely populated regions to achieve both higher quality and savings. The preliminary result of these reforms has been a reduction in teacher vacancies from 60% to 33% and a 6% increase in enrollment in 1 year. In addition, retention rates have also increased, especially for girls. Rajasthan's experience could be a good model to replicate. Right to learning and measurement of remediation. Given the amendment to Rule 23(2) of the RTE, states should codify the expected learning outcomes for each class and put greater emphasis on continuous and comprehensive evaluation (CCE) to achieve the defined learning outcomes. The comprehensive National Achievements Survey initiated in 2017 needs to be institutionalized on an annual basis. The remediation process should be made part of the education system and should be run concurrently with regular classes so that no child gets left behind. In addition, high school readiness programs, tutorials, including bridge programs, should be incorporated just after Class 8 or in the early months of Class 9, especially for remediation. The CCE should also encompass compartmental exams to check the quality and outcomes of remediation. Passing each subject either directly or through subsequent CCE could be made a necessary condition for eligibility to appear in the subsequent grades exam. This may be implemented with or without the no detention policy. Individualized tracking. An electronic national educational registry may be conceptualized for tracking each child's learning outcomes based on CCE and final exams through a unique ID. This will help track the cohort survival rate and monitor students requiring remediation. It will also help prepare a list of children who drop out after the elementary education level. Further, this will enable greater attention to be paid to the needs of children from socially deprived groups and those with physical or intellectual disabilities. 4. Flexibility in education stream and vocational education. Develop a system of awarding credits for every subject and grade passed, specifying the minimum credits required to appear in the final exam for any grade. This system of credits may remain valid forever and be seamlessly integrated across different levels of education, providing an opportunity for lifelong tracking of learning outcomes in the electronic National Educational Registry. This will enable bright children to amass more credits in the subjects of their interest once the system attains maturity. Give children the option, under the guidance of the school and parents, of branching into vocational courses from secondary school level upwards. Only children who expressly choose to continue with general education should be allowed to do so. Develop separate track even within the general education stream, as has been done in certain advanced countries. A specially devised aptitude test must be conducted in the IX grade and rechecked in the 10th grade, based on which students should be given the option of choosing a regular track versus an advanced track. These two tracks would differ in the difficulty level and choice of subjects. Those pursuing the regular track should be given the option of completing the advanced track syllabus through open schooling at a later point in life. Design guidelines for states to implement vocational education at the school level, which may cover aspects such as selection of schools, trades, tendering process for labs, database of industry contacts for field visits, guest lectures, timings, workshops, permitting informal apprenticeships or assistantship in the formal system, etc. Pilot different innovation models in vocational education and provide adequate funding for successful innovative programs. 5. Curriculum, syllabus. Pre-primary and primary syllabus should be designed on a skill, competency-based continuum. At the pre-primary level, it would help develop school readiness, and at the primary level, it would facilitate multi-level and multi-grade teaching. The vocational education syllabus should be NSQF aligned and ensure smooth transition from school education to vocational education. The curriculum should include summer activities and monthly study trips, including visits to practitioners for practical learning. 6. Teacher training. Improving the quality of teaching is an integral aspect of improvement in school education. Given its importance, it is being covered separately in another chapter. 7. Reducing mental stress. The above recommendations in terms of remedial education and allowing different tracks of education will help address students' mental stress. Life skills, including coping with failure, crises, and stress management, should be included as part of the school curriculum. Easy and safe access to mental health support should be strengthened. Child helplines should feed into easy and safe access to counseling in schools, especially for children at risk. Easy and safe access to counseling and support must be provided for girl children in schools, especially focused on victims of abuse, violence, and other gender-related social evils. 24. Higher education. Objectives. Increase the gross enrollment ratio in higher education from 25% in 2016-17 to 35% by 2022-23. Make higher education more inclusive for the most vulnerable groups. Adopt accreditation as a mandatory quality assurance framework and have multiple highly reputed accreditation agencies for facilitating the process. Create an enabling ecosystem to enhance the spirit of research and innovation. Improve employability of students completing their higher education. Current situation. India has 864 university-level institutions, 40,026 colleges and 11,669 standalone institutions. The number of university-level institutions has grown by about 25% and the number of colleges by about 13% in the last 5 years. The private sector accounts for a large share of these institutions, managing 36.2% of universities, 77.8% of colleges and 76% of standalone institutions in 2016-17. India's higher education GER, calculated for the age group 18 to 23 years, increased from 11.5% in 2005-06 to 25.2% in 2016-17. However, we lag behind the world average of 33% and that of comparable economies, such as Brazil, 46%, Russia, 78%, and China, 30%. Korea has a higher education GAR of over 93%. In addition, regional and social disparities continue to exist in higher education. GAR varies from 5.5% in Daman and Diu to 56.1% in Chandigarh. Figure 24.1 indicates GAR in terms of gender and social groups. GAR is 26.2% for males and 24.5% for females, with females constituting 46.8% of the total enrollment of 35.7 million. While the GERs for scheduled castes, SCs, scheduled tribes, STs, other backward castes, OBCs, and minorities have been increasing, these are still below the overall average in most cases. Quality is a challenge in higher education in India. Few Indian institutions feature in the top 200 in world rankings. In comparison, China has 7 universities in the top 150, 3 in top 50, of the Quacquarelli-Simons, QS World Rankings. These rankings did rank 3 IITs in the IISc amongst the top 20 BRICS universities in 2018. Another issue is the employability of graduates. Recognizing the need to improve access, equity and excellence in higher education in the country, the government has taken significant steps, including the following. Implementation and continuation of the centrally sponsored scheme, Rashtriya Uchchatar Shiksha Abhiyan (RUSA). The scheme seeks to improve access, equity and quality in state higher education institutions through a reforms-based approach and links funding to performance. The continuation of RUSA was recently approved until March 2020 with an almost threefold increase in allocation compared to that in its first phase, 2013-17. The second phase of RUSA puts a premium on quality enhancement and addresses concerns of access and equity in the aspirational districts identified by the NITI Aayog. National assessment and accreditation reforms. While making accreditation of higher education institutions mandatory, the reforms move away from an intrusive system to a more enabling, mixed method of assessment and accreditation. The process of accreditation has been fast-tracked and made more transparent. The emphasis is more on self-assessment, data capture, validation by third-party evaluation and objective peer review. This is a paradigm shift from the subjective assessment parameters adopted earlier. Ongoing reforms could lead to the empanelment of multiple accreditation agencies. Regulations for graded autonomy to universities and autonomous colleges. A three-tiered graded autonomy regulatory system has been initiated, with the categorization of institutions as per their accreditation score by the National Assessment and Accreditation Council (NAAC) or other empaneled accreditation agencies, or by their presence in reputed world rankings. Category I and Category II universities will have significant autonomy as shown in Figure 24.2. Similarly, the University Grants Commission (UGC) has also issued new regulations for granting autonomy based on accreditation scores for colleges. These colleges will have the freedom to conduct examinations, prescribe evaluation systems, and even announce results, but are not allowed to grant degrees. Constraints. Outdated and multiple regulatory mechanisms limit innovation and progressive change. Outdated curriculum results in a mismatch between education and job market requirements, dampens students' creativity, and hampers the development of their analytical abilities. Quality assurance or accreditation mechanisms are inadequate. There is no policy framework for participation of foreign universities in higher education. There is no overarching funding body to promote and encourage research and innovation. Public funding in the sector remains inadequate. There are a large number of faculty posts lying vacant. For example, in central universities, nearly 33% of teacher posts were vacant in March 2018. Faculty training is inadequate. Way forward. 1. Regulatory and governance reforms. Ensure effective coordination of roles of different higher education regulators, such as the UGC, All India Council for Technical Education (AICTE), and National Council for Teacher Education (NCTE), and restructure or merge these where needed. Amend the UGC Act to provide legislative backing to the tiered regulatory structure. Create a framework to allow foreign universities of global repute to operate in India, in collaboration with Indian institutions to offer joint degree programs. Ensure that the selection process of vice chancellors of universities is transparent and objective. Link at least a proportion of the grants to performance and quality. 2. Curriculum design. Domain experts in each educational field should be asked to develop a basic minimum standard in curriculum that will serve as a benchmark for institutions at the undergraduate and postgraduate levels. Institutions should be given the freedom to innovate and expand curriculum beyond this basic minimum standard. Curriculum and pedagogy at all higher education institutions should be updated continuously through mandatory feedback from domain experts, faculty, students, industry, and alumni. Diverse post-secondary career options should be provided through skills, vocational training that should be integrated seamlessly with higher education and the skilling mission. Internships by students in undergraduate courses should be encouraged and potentially mandated in all professional and technical courses. This would help with the practical orientation of students. 3. Reforming accreditation framework. All higher education institutions must be compulsorily and regularly accredited. Despite a twofold increase in accreditation levels in the last 5 years, accreditation coverage is still inadequate. One way to bridge this gap by 2022-23 is to allow credible accreditation agencies, empaneled through a transparent, high-quality process, to provide accreditation. Accreditation must give adequate weightage to outcomes rather than inputs only. Public information material brought out by institutions and their websites should prominently display the accreditation status and grade. 4. Creating world-class universities. 20 universities, 10 each from the public and private sector, are being selected as institutions of eminence and are helping to attain world-class standards of teaching and research. The funding of 1,000 crore Indian rupees over a 5-year period to each institution, planned for selected public universities, could be further increased. Further, a graded mechanism to ensure additional funds flow to the top public universities should be developed. This is similar to the model adopted by Singapore and China to develop their top 2 public universities. 5. Performance-linked funding and incentives. Only 2 out of 47 central universities have NIAC scores of above 3.51, despite generous funding available to them. An evaluation may be undertaken to understand the challenges faced by these central universities, and they should be asked to develop strategic plans for getting into the top 500 of global universities rankings in the next 10 years. Going forward, funding to these institutions should be linked to performance and outcomes through the Ministry of Human Resource Development and the newly constituted Higher Education Funding Agency. RUSA may be continued beyond March 2020, subject to a credible third-party evaluation. This reforms-based scheme has already made significant headway in getting state public education institutions into the mainstream. Continued support, linked to performance, will go a long way in pushing some of India's leading state public universities up the ranking ladder. 6. Development of teacher resources. Develop stringent norms for faculty recruitment in universities and colleges. A rigorous and transparent process of identifying the best talent for the higher education sector should be put in place. An ecosystem should be created where the most deserving talent is hired and retained. This should include eligibility tests of a high standard, such as existing UC-recognized NET, as a minimum eligibility criterion for faculty recruitment, to ensure recruitment of candidates with academic and/or research aptitude. Quality teaching skills are in short supply across disciplines. A central scheme may be launched to attract teachers of Indian origin. Enable and encourage the recruitment of practitioners with distinguished experience from professional bodies, industry as faculty. This can be achieved through the creation of a separate parallel track on which the mandatory PhD qualification for faculty may be relaxed. These industry practitioners may also be encouraged to join as adjunct faculty in the higher education institutions. Introduce pre-service faculty training, 3 to 6 months, including faculty exposure to the latest tools, techniques of quality teaching and research. Continuous faculty training and updating process should be introduced and made mandatory. Develop a system of outcome-based faculty evaluation in higher education, which is flexible across different categories of institutions. Conduct regular quality checks of journals, especially those that are used for evaluating faculty on academic performance indicators (APIS). 7. Distance and online education. There is a need to broaden the scope of massive open online course (MOOCs) and open and distance learning (ODL) and tap their potential to provide access to quality education beyond geographical boundaries. Universities with high accreditation scores may be permitted to offer online education programs. In regular courses, technology could be leveraged to overcome faculty shortages. 25. Teacher education and training. Objectives. There cannot be a quality education system without quality teachers. Therefore, a thorough revamp of the entire ecosystem of teacher education both at the school and college level is necessary. In this context, the objectives for 2022-23 include: enforcing minimum teacher standards through rigorous teacher eligibility tests and criteria for the induction of teachers. Improving in-service teacher training system. Increasing teacher accountability for learning outcomes of students. Addressing the problem of teacher vacancies and teacher absenteeism. Current situation. The current institutional framework for teachers training consists of the following. The National Council for Teacher Education (NCT) is the regulator for teacher education in the country. NCT has recognized 23,219 teacher training institutes in the country. Around 90% of these are privately run, of which 1,011 institutions are for training teacher educators (MEd). The intake of these teacher training institutes was 17.58 lakh in 2016. The in-service training framework includes 592 district institutes of educational training, DIETs, 112 colleges of teacher education, CTEs, 35 institutes of advanced studies, IASEs, and 17 block institutes of teacher education, BITES. The block resource centers, BRCs, and cluster resource centers, CRCs, form the lowest rung of institutions providing in-service training to school teachers. As per the Right to Education (RTE) Act, a teacher appointed in schools should have passed the teacher eligibility test (TET) conducted by the relevant government body. In institutions of higher education, passing the National Eligibility Test, NET, State Level Eligibility Test, SLET, has been the minimum eligibility criterion for teaching. While teacher education institutes churn out a large number of candidates with a bachelor's and master's in education, the quality of teacher education has not been assured. In 2015, only 13.53% candidates who sat for the Central Teacher Eligibility Test, CTET, qualified. A primary reason for this is inadequate accreditation and grading process followed by NCTE in the past. In 2017, NCTE initiated the process of collecting information from the institutes and grading them based on their learning outcomes. At the higher educational level, the pass percentage in the UGC NET exams is also low, where only 6% candidates qualify. Besides, the quality of PhDs in several institutions does not rise to the required standard. In-service teacher training needs upgradation. While only about 20% of school teachers are still professionally untrained, only 14.9% teachers received in-service training for elementary education in 2015-16 even though the Sarva Siksha Abhiyan (SSA) has a provision of 20 days of in-service training for all teachers. The BRCs and CRCs are primarily involved in administrative work and provide very little resource support to schools. In 2017, Section 23(2) of the RTE Act was amended to ensure that all teachers acquire minimum qualifications prescribed under the Act by March 31, 2019. To assess the performance and progress of teachers, the National Council of Educational Research and Training, NCERT, had developed performance indicators, PINDICS, in 2013. 14 states have adopted or adapted the PINDICS and 2 more have initiated its implementation thus far. Teacher vacancies are also affecting the quality of education. Out of the total sanctioned posts of 51.03 lakhs, the number of working teachers is 42.03 lakhs, leading to vacancies of 9 lakh teachers in schools, of which 4.2 lakh teacher vacancies are in SSA schools. 33% of schools do not meet the pupil-teacher ratio. Ironically, despite the overall shortage of teachers, there are also 2.91 lakh surplus teachers across the country because of an imbalance in regional demand-supply. Teacher attendance at schools is another issue of concern. A study shows that 25% of teachers were absent from school, and only half were teaching during an unannounced visit as part of a national representative sample survey of government primary schools in India. Constraints. There is insufficient regulatory monitoring of teacher education institutions. Teacher eligibility tests in some states may not be adequately robust. There are inadequate in-service training programs as well as lack of public funding support. There is no robust system for balancing the demand for and supply of teachers at the regional or state level. There are limited accountability systems for teachers. Way forward. Strengthening the regulatory framework. A committee should be set up to develop transparent, objective, and rigorous criteria to recognize institutions. NCTE may assess institutions on these criteria and take steps to enforce them. In addition, the accreditation system developed should ensure the closure of fraudulent or dysfunctional teacher education institutions. 5 to 6 teacher training institutions of eminence with an annual intake of 2,000 students each need to be established. Robust in-service teacher development. In-service teacher professional development programs should be redesigned with continuous progressive development through different modes such as early tenure coaching, peer learning, resource centers, demonstration classes, sabbaticals for research, advanced studies, seminars and visits to other institutions. The P.T. Madan Mohan Malviya National Mission for Teachers and Teaching, which seeks to build a strong professional cadre of teachers by setting performance standards and creating top-class institutional facilities for the professional development of teachers, should be taken up in mission mode. Accountability of teachers. A national electronic teacher registry should be set up as part of the National Education Registry that has been proposed in the section on school education. The entire educational profile of each teacher aspirant may be hosted in one section of this registry by all teacher training institutions. This will be an electronic platform to bring together employers and job aspirants in this sector. All teachers should be listed on the National Educational Registry by 2020, while linking students to teachers. Performance indicators PINDICS 2013 and the quality monitoring tools of NCERT should be adopted or adapted by states, UTs. Universal monitoring of teachers' competencies should be done using PINDICS or any such state-developed tool on an annual basis and uploaded on the National Electronic Teacher Registry. The salary increment of teachers should be linked to an assessment of their performance. States should test teachers tri-annually on the same test designed for the children they are teaching. It will ensure competency of teachers in the subjects being taught by them. The teacher eligibility test (TET) across states should be strengthened as per central TET, standardization of results, quality benchmarking of testing items and extending the TET for teachers at preschool and classes 9 to 12 levels. The UGC recognized NET SLET should be continued as a minimum eligibility criterion for recruitment to assistant professor positions. States that currently do not conduct the SLET should do so to enable availability of a larger base of qualified candidates for faculty positions. Eligibility tests should ensure quality in selection. Tackling teacher demand-supply imbalance. Each state must develop a teacher demand forecast model for all levels, starting from elementary to higher education. The surplus and deficiency can be aggregated at the national level and appropriate decisions taken on whether to set up new training institutions or provide leverage to existing ones to correct overall deficiencies. 26. Skill development. Objectives. For harnessing the demographic advantage that it enjoys, India needs to build the capacity and infrastructure for skilling, reskilling, upskilling existing and new entrants to the labor force. The goals to be met until 2022-23 are as follows. Increase the proportion of formally skilled labor from the current 5.4% of India's workforce to at least 15%. Ensure inclusivity and reduce divisions based on gender, location, organized, unorganized, etc. India's skill development infrastructure should be brought on par with global standards by developing internationally compliant National Occupation Standards, NOS, and the qualification packs, QP, that define a job role. Making all training compliant with the National Skills Qualification Framework, NSQF. Anticipating future skill needs to adapt skill development courses. Skill development should be made an integral part of the secondary school curriculum. Current situation. According to the National Policy for Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, more than 54% of India's population is below 25 years of age and 62% of India's population is aged between 15 and 59 years. This demographic dividend is expected to last for the next 25 years. With most of the developed world experiencing an aging population, India has the opportunity to supply skilled labor globally and become the world's skill capital. However, the demographic advantage might turn into a demographic disaster if the skill sets of both new entrants and the existing workforce do not match industry requirements. Recognizing the challenge, the Government of India has launched many initiatives to equip fresh entrants with relevant skills and to upgrade the skills of the existing workforce. A dedicated Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship (MSDE) was set up in 2014 to implement the National Skill Development Mission, which envisions skilling at scale with speed and standards. On July 15, 2015, on the first ever World Youth Skills Day, the Honorable Prime Minister launched the Skill India scheme. To improve the relevance and quality of courses offered by industrial training institutes, polytechnics and private training providers, sector skill councils, SSCs, have been involved in curriculum upgradation, preparation, and in the assessment and certification process. Courses are being aligned to the National Skills Qualifications Framework, NSQF. Recognition of prior learning, RPL, has been introduced to ensure certification of and bridge training for the existing workforce. The year-end review 2017 released by MSDE suggests that government initiatives are gathering pace. Until 2017, 2.5 crore candidates have been skilled under the ministry's programs since its inception. This includes 40.5 lakh candidates trained under the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana (PMKVY) and 74 lakh candidates under fee-based training programs run by National Skill Development Corporation (NSDC). Constraints. The National Skill Development Policy estimates that only 5.4% of the workforce in India has undergone formal skill training as compared to 68% in the UK, 75% in Germany and 96% in South Korea. The India Skill Report 2018 states that only 47% of those coming out of higher educational institutions are employable. Given that 83% of the workforce is engaged in the unorganized sector with limited training facilities, upgrading of skills both in manufacturing and services sectors remains a challenge. The major challenges to skill development are the following: mapping skill requirements sector-wise and geographically, making vocational training an aspirational choice, involving industry for improved quality and relevance, scaling up the apprenticeship program, integrating the informal sector into the skill development ecosystem, putting in place an effective, internationally recognized assessment and certification system. Way forward: mapping skill requirements for a demand-driven skill development ecosystem. Skill development plans and strategies should be developed by geography and sector by mapping the availability of infrastructure and on the basis of assessing skill requirements both at the national and state levels. Talukas, districts should be required to provide the information required for such mapping. Industry stakeholders must be incentivized to provide data on their skill requirements on an ongoing basis, which could be used as input for the skill requirement assessment made at different levels. Regular labor market studies should be conducted and published by the MSDE in collaboration with the SSCs. These studies should capture changes in industry requirements to assess the skill sets required and introduce changes in training curricula. Create vocational training innovation centers for systematic research and conducting longitudinal studies on improving vocational education. Improving training delivery and quality. Capacities of teacher training institutes need to be upgraded to ensure the availability of qualified trainers. It is also important to provide for cross-learning by teachers and industry experts through industry institute linkages. A single regulatory body with branches in all states should be set up to lay down minimum standards for all players in the skilling system like training providers, assessors, etc., and to issue NSQF-aligned certificates. To address the requirement of skilled workers in the unorganized sector, scaling up RPL is required under the PMKVY, using bridge training, apprenticeship, dual training, work-based learning and advanced courses. In addition to scaling RPL, there should be a focus on the identification of transferable skills. This can be done by developing a skills trade matrix and highlighting the overlap of skills across different trades, such as information and communication technology, ICT, knowledge of languages, etc. The most common transferable skills across the board should be made part of the basic skill development curriculum. Vocational education in secondary schools. As recommended by the subgroup of Chief Ministers on Skill Development, vocational education may be initiated from Class 8. The report pointed out that lessons could be drawn from the Himachal Pradesh Payment of Skill Development Allowance to Educated Unemployed Persons Scheme, 2013. This has provided for an allowance starting from 1000 Indian rupees per month for students who have at least passed 8th standard. This will help children get acquainted with formal vocational courses and apprenticeship training. Provisions for credit transfers into higher education could also be considered. Participation by private schools should be incentivized with lower interest rates on loans to expand training facilities. Apprenticeship programs. Active advocacy is needed to create awareness about recent amendments in the Apprenticeship Act, 1961, and about the National Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme, NAPS, among different stakeholders. The claim process for reimbursement, through which companies get appropriate refund for funds spent on stipends under the NAPS, needs to be streamlined. Facilitate the integration of the micro, small and medium enterprises (MSME) sector into the apprenticeship system by linking it to Mudra scheme. Skilling. Mainstreaming skill development with education through a system for academic equivalence to ITI's qualifications. This would provide ITI candidates option to attain academic qualification as well. An overseas employment promotion agency should be set up at the national level under the Ministry of External Affairs. Apart from working with the MSDE to train and certify Indian workers keen on overseas employment, in line with international standards, it could also support pre-departure orientation training, PDOT, including language and soft skills training modules. This agency could help in identifying potential partners and streamlining efforts of India International Skill Centers. Publicize role models, micro-entrepreneurs who have benefited from vocational training courses. Funding. Alternative financial sources such as Corporate Social Responsibility, CSR funds, Compensatory Afforestation Fund Management and Planning Authority, CAMPA, funds, Building and Construction Workers CES, Members of Parliament Local Area Development, MPLAD, Fund, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, MGNREGA, etc., should be tapped to expand the skill program and contribute to National Skill Development Fund. Strengthening SSCs. SSCs should be clustered and based on occupations, functions with respect to job standards, QPs across domains. New technologies could also be considered as a criterion for clustering. This would ensure convergence in efforts of different SSCs. It is recommended that job roles of SSCs having horizontal applicability across sectors should be integrated and customized to a sector's requirements. Monitoring and evaluation. Since skilling is dynamic, it is necessary to monitor programs regularly. Hence, it is necessary to develop state-level indicators, such as placement rates, which help monitoring whether demand requirements are being addressed and the impact of various government schemes. NSDC may get into partnerships with private jobs counseling agencies for helping newly skilled persons with soft skills and adapting to local conditions. 27. Public health management and action. Objectives. To revamp radically the public and preventive health system in the nation through the following strategic interventions. Mobilize public health action through an integrated, intersectoral and pan-stakeholder approach, targeted at communities and individuals as well as grassroots organizations, aimed at creating an unprecedented people-led movement for health and wellness. Operationalize vital enablers, a public health and management cadre, b. Public health agency with capacitated supporting institutions, c. Municipalities and Panchayati Raj institutions. Current situation. Public health, i.e., the science of keeping communities healthy through the prevention of disease and promotion of health and wellness, has historically been a low priority in India. Of the total current expenditure on health classified by healthcare functions, preventive care accounts for 6.7%. The money spent on curing people, on the other hand, is 51% of the expenditure, with the remaining money being spent on pharmaceuticals, other medical goods, and patient transportation. Although India accounted for only 18% of the global population in 2016, we accounted for 34% of the global tuberculosis burden and 26% of the premature mortality due to diarrhea, lower respiratory, and other common infectious diseases. At the same time, non-communicable diseases (NCDs), including cardiovascular conditions, chronic obstructive respiratory diseases, diabetes, mental health conditions and cancers are now the leading cause of health loss, with 55% morbidity and premature mortality attributable to these conditions. The range of health loss across states is wide. Kerala and Goa have the lowest rates while Assam, Uttar Pradesh and Chhattisgarh have the highest rates. Public health action and management is a scientific and professional endeavor which should not be left to untrained employees relying on common sense alone. A suboptimal public health system makes it challenging to tackle NCDs, which, in the first place, is all about prevention and early detection. Causes us to resort to high-cost secondary and tertiary health care in many cases. Diminishes our preparedness for new and emerging threats such as bioterrorism. Compromises our ability to harness the demographic dividend. The nations with whom we compete or aspire to emulate have achieved health and wellness outcomes on the foundation of strong public health systems. Thus, it is an absolutely essential ingredient for building a new India. During the last 4 years, the government has taken several steps to strengthen public health in the country, including the launch of Mission Indradhanush and intensified Mission Indradhanush as well as the National Ayush Mission. Efforts have also been intensified for eliminating neglected tropical diseases like Kala Azar and lymphatic filariasis. Further, the war against tuberculosis has been escalated through the launch of the National Strategic Plan in 2017. Constraints. 1. Diseases need to be prevented first, a concept that has historically been inadequately acknowledged in India. The large burden of NCDs requires lifestyle and community level interventions. Ensuring people eat right, sleep right, maintain good hygiene, exercise, and adopt a healthy lifestyle necessitates concerted interventions at various levels of the system. 2. In most states, population health management positions are staffed by doctors trained primarily in the provision of curative services or by generalist civil servants. They have limited public health training, which includes an understanding of the causes and linkages between risk factors and diseases as well as disciplines including epidemiology, biostatistics, social and behavioral sciences and management of health services. Likewise, hospitals are run by clinicians with little expertise in managing health facilities. 3. The following preventable risk factors are causes for a major proportion of diseases in the country: maternal and child malnutrition, air pollution, unhealthy diets, high blood pressure, high blood glucose, tobacco consumption, unsafe water, and poor sanitary practices. Of these, nutrition, environment, water and sanitation are outside the purview of the health ministry. Therefore, accountability for ensuring vital public health actions is spread thin. 4. There is no single authority responsible for public health that is legally empowered to enforce compliance from other public authorities and citizens, even though several factors may require intersectoral action to achieve a measurable impact on population health. Way forward. 1. Mobilize public health action at multiple levels. Public funding on health should be increased to at least 2.5% of GDP as envisaged in the National Health Policy, 2017. Create an environment, through appropriate policy measures, that encourages healthy choices and behaviors. Make the practice of yoga a regular activity in all schools through certified instructors. Increased access on tobacco, alcohol and unhealthy foods such as soda and sugar-sweetened beverages. Co-locate Ayush services in at least 50% of primary health centers, 70% of community health centers and 100% of district hospitals by 2022-23. Strengthen the Village Health Sanitation and Nutrition Day platform to cover a broader set of health issues across various population groups instead of only focusing on child health. Activate multiple channels: schools, colleges, women's groups, traditional events like fairs, social media platforms, national cadet corps etc. And prepare communication materials for catalyzing behavioral change towards greater recognition of preventive health care. Make nutrition, water and sanitation part of the core functions of Panchayati Raj institutions and municipalities. 2. Institute a public health and management cadre in states. Incentivize state governments to invest in creating a dedicated cadre for public health at the state, district and block levels. Characteristics of the cadre. Train officials in public health related disciplines including epidemiology, biostatistics, demography and social and behavioral sciences. Provide training in hospital management to suitably equip personnel responsible for managing large facilities. Create a career pathway up to the highest levels within the state health departments for those trained in public health as well as for those with clinical specialties. Allow mid-level providers responsible for managing health and wellness centers delivering comprehensive primary health care to rise to higher level positions within the cadre. Similarly, allow public health functionaries at the block and district levels to enter the cadre. Mandate a master's level qualification, in addition to specified training, for officials taking on leadership positions. Institutional mechanisms. Develop a model public health and management cadre by drawing upon best practices and engage with states to adapt, refine and institutionalize the model. Formulate guidelines to create the cadre, primarily by realigning the requisite skill sets of existing functionaries with service conditions. 3. Create a focal point for public health at the central level with state counterparts. Create a designated and autonomous focal agency with the required capacities and linkages to perform the functions of disease surveillance, information gathering on the health impact of policies of key non-health departments, maintenance of national health statistics, enforcement of public health regulations, and dissemination of information to the public. An appropriately empowered and capacitated National Center for Disease Control may be considered to play this role with support from relevant organizations. Create a counterpart public health agency in each state where they do not already exist. 4. Miscellaneous. Explore the need for a public health act to legislatively empower and, if necessary, institutionalize the public health agency discussed above. Redefine the role of the Technical Directorate, Directorate General of Health Services, and create a Directorate of Public Health. Develop a comprehensive MIS including baseline data for NCDs. Compare data visualization. New Delhi, ICMR, PHFI, and IHME, 2017. Available from India. Accessed November 19, 2017. Evaluation of primary health centers, PHCs, 60% of community health centers, CHCs, and 100% of district hospitals by 2020. Until the end of the 12th five-year plan period, Ayush facilities had been co-located in 37% of PHCs, 50% of CHCs, and 63% of district hospitals. 28. Comprehensive primary health care. Objectives. Under Ayushman Bharat, scale up a new vision for comprehensive primary health care across the country, built on the platform of Health and Wellness Centers, HWCs. 2. Provide quality ambulatory services for an inclusive package of diagnostic, curative, rehabilitative, and palliative care close to the people. Deliver preventive and promotion services and action on the ground to tackle determinants of ill health locally. Create a mass movement for Healthy India, Swasth Bharat Jan Andolan. Current situation. Primary health care is a key enabler for higher life expectancy, better health outcomes, and lower costs for the nation. Primary health interventions help detect diseases early, well before complications set in, thus preempting the need for secondary and tertiary care. Developed nations such as the UK, Australia, Canada, Netherlands, and Sweden spend a large share of their federal healthcare budgets on primary care. In India, primary care infrastructure exists as a network of sub-centers, primary health centers, and community health centers. However, the focus of services has remained narrow, largely prioritized around reproductive, maternal and child health care, and some communicable diseases, notably, malaria. The battle against non-communicable diseases can only be won through a primary health system that ensures that chronic diseases are not only detected early, but also that preventive action is taken to ensure improved lifestyles. The National Health Policy, NHP, 2017, envisages comprehensive primary health care delivered through HWCs. The policy also commits that 2/3 or more of government spending will be targeted at primary care. Additionally, the announcement of Ayushman Bharat by the government is a game changer. Constraints. 1. The existing primary healthcare model in the country is limited in scope. Even where there is a well-functioning public primary health center, only services related to pregnancy care, limited childcare, and certain services related to national health programs are provided, which represent only 15% of all morbidities for which people seek care. 2. The conversion of 150,000 sub-centers into HWCs was announced in the budget speech in 2017 and was enshrined in the NHP, 2017. Although less than 4,000 such centers were sanctioned in 2017-18, the government is committed to accelerating the pace of sanctioning and putting up HWCs to meet the target in good time. 3. Supply-side deficiencies, poor management skills, and lack of appropriate training and supportive supervision for health workers prevent delivery of the desired quality of health services. 4. A primary health care model for the growing urban population has not been conceptualized, notwithstanding a few assorted initiatives by some states. 5. Although the National Health Mission focuses on engaging communities through village health, nutrition, and sanitation societies, health has not yet become a people's movement. 6. Funding for health is inadequate, leading to low spending on primary care. 7. Citizens have to incur high out-of-pocket expenditure on primary health care, of which the largest expenditure is on drugs. 8. There is a shortage of adequately trained and motivated personnel. Way forward. 1. Accelerate the establishment of a network of 150,000 HWCs. Operationalize a network of 150,000 HWCs on priority by 2022-23 in order to ensure sufficient coverage of affordable primary care and lower the burden on secondary and tertiary care. HWCs should provide services such as screening and management of non-communicable diseases, screening and basic management of mental health ailments, care for common ophthalmic and end problems, basic dental health care, geriatric and palliative health care, and trauma care and emergency care. These are in addition to the existing requirement for primary care services related to reproductive and child health, adolescent health, and selected communicable diseases covered by national health programs. The key features of New India's primary health care system will be a primary health care nucleus comprising 5 to 6 upgraded sub-centers coupled with a primary health center and population outreach. A team led by a mid-level health service provider, auxiliary nurse midwives, ANMs, accredited social health activists, ASHAs, and a male health worker responsible for comprehensive primary health care services for a population of about 5,000. Planning of health facility distribution in districts to ensure that a continuum of care is available on the principles of time to care through a strong referral linkage. Digitization of family records and information from the community to the facility level. Use of real-time data to guide public health action and implementation monitoring. The HWCs would act as the gateway for access to secondary and tertiary health services. 2. Enable mechanisms for rapid scale-up. Put in place the following work streams to create 150,000 well-functioning HWCs across the country: infrastructure, human resources, mid-level professional recruitment, training and deployment and orientation of ANMs and male health workers, and information and communication technology, ICT, system, supply chain for drugs and disposables, clinical and public health protocols and tools, managerial, supervisory processes, and monitoring, evaluation and accountability systems. Under Ayushman Bharat, put in place the necessary institutional mechanisms with a focus on health and wellness at the central and state levels for effective, timely and robust system-level implementation as well as strong engagement with departments, directorates of health in the states. Establish special national and state-level task forces and command centers. Create mechanisms for rapid scaling up of training. Develop empowered governance mechanisms for efficient decision-making, coordination, funds flow, procurement, contracting, recruitment, construction and implementation. Mobilize corporate social responsibility, CSR, and non-resident Indians for funding HWCs. Some HWCs could also be mobile, particularly for better access to remote communities. 3. Coordinate action for disease prevention and public health promotion and to address social determinants of health. Provide preventive services to improve healthy behaviors for family health and control the incidence of communicable and non-communicable diseases among the population covered by HWCs. Facilitate partnerships between HWC teams and other frontline development teams, nutrition, education, Swachh Bharat etc. To engage with communities to address the socio-cultural and environmental determinants of ill health at the local level. 4. Catalyze people's participation for Healthy India, Swasth Bharat Jan Andolan. Mandate and motivate HWC teams to work closely with village health, sanitation and nutrition societies, Panchayati Raj institutions as well as all other constituents of civil society in rural and urban spaces. This is vital because people are not just targets of health services but partners and multipliers of health-related activities. 5. Emphasize concurrent learning, operations research and innovation. Undertake a well-funded research program to find the best pathways for effective and context-specific scaling up of primary health care. This is critical because it is well known that a single model of primary health care may not work for all districts, states in the country. Conduct research to assess the population-level health impact of the program and effects on out-of-pocket expenses. Develop urban adaptations of comprehensive primary care. 2016. 29. Human resources for health. Objectives. Achieve a doctor population ratio of at least 1:1400, WHO Norm 1:1000, and nurse population ratio of at least 1:500, WHO Norm 1:400 by 2022-23. Ensure availability of paramedics and doctors as per Indian Public Health Standard, IPHS norms in high priority districts by 2020, National Health Policy, 2017. Deploy mid-level providers, MLPs, to manage the primary healthcare system. Generate at least 1.5 million jobs in the public health sector by 2022-23, a large number of which will employ women. Current situation. India's health workforce is characterized by a diversity of providers delivering services in allopathy and alternative systems of medicine like Ayurveda, homeopathy, Unani and Siddha. As of March 2017, there were 10.23 lakh allopathic doctors registered with the Medical Council of India or state medical councils. Assuming 80% availability, it is estimated that around 8.18 lakh doctors may actually be available for active service. This gives a doctor population ratio of 1:1613. The current nurse population ratio is 1:588. Due to the suboptimal quality of training offered by several institutions that have mushroomed over the years, limited career prospects and poor working conditions, especially in the private sector, there is a significant shortage of skilled nurses in the country. Moreover, the distribution of doctors and nurses across the country is uneven. Urban areas have 4 times as many doctors and 3 times as many nurses as compared to rural areas. Medical and nursing colleges are concentrated in a few states, e.g., Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Gujarat, and Maharashtra. There are also severe shortages in the category of allied health professionals, AHPs, including medical lab technicians, optometrists, and radiologists. For instance, as of March 31, 2016, there was a shortfall of 13,659 lab technicians at primary health centers, PHCs, and community health centers, CHCs, across India. Similarly, there was a shortfall of 3,645 radiographers at CHCs. The absence of a central regulatory authority for AHPs has resulted in the mushrooming of institutes, colleges without affiliation or recognition, giving rise to quality issues for this category of health professionals as well. As far as specialists are concerned, a large number of posts are vacant all over the country. According to estimates, India needs close to 0.5 million additional specialists. Ayushman Bharat has triggered the need for even more human resources for health (HRH). There is also an acute shortage of medical faculty. Of the 1,830 faculty posts across 6 All India Institutes of Medical Sciences (AIIMS), approximately 583, 31%, had been filled up until July 2017. The government has made several efforts to address the shortage in quality of HRH in the country. These include the passage of the National Medical Commission (NMC) Bill 2017 by the Union Cabinet, addition of 15,364 undergraduate and 9,855 postgraduate seats in medical colleges, as well as increasing the superannuation age of doctors to 65 years in the Central Health Service, among other measures. Steps have also been taken to address the shortage of specialists through the system of diplomas from the College of Physicians and Surgeons, CPS, for instance. Constraints. The regulatory system, Medical Council of India, Nursing Council of India, has failed to ensure adequate availability and quality of health professionals. There is inadequate capacity to train doctors, especially specialists and super specialists. Private practice by medial faculty in teaching institutions is rampant in several states, compromising on the commitment to teaching and institutional clinical work. Many state and private medical, nursing, dental colleges have poor infrastructure. There is no comprehensive and consistent HRH policy. Workforce shortages and uneven distribution of doctors, nurses, specialists and allied health professionals plague the sector. The quality of health professional training and adherence to standards is suboptimal, including in the private sector. Health professionals in the public sector are inadequately compensated and motivation levels are extremely poor. Fair compensation in the private sector, e.g., for nurses, is also a challenge. There is paucity of data on HRH in the country. Way forward. 1. Reform the governance of medical, nursing, dentistry and pharmacy education in the country. Enact the NMC Bill 2017. Revamp the Ayush, Nursing, Dentistry and Pharmacy Councils along the lines of the NMC Bill 2017. Establish a council for allied health professionals to ensure standardization of education and putting in place quality control mechanisms for educational institutions, teaching methods, clinical protocols and workforce management. Put in place an updated curriculum for medical and allied professions that keeps pace with the changing dynamics of public health, policy and demographics. Establish a nursing school in every large district or cluster of districts with a population of 20 to 30 lakhs as per the National Health Policy, 2017. Take steps to revamp the regulatory system of nursing education, ensure quality training in nursing schools, develop specialties in nursing, develop centers of excellence in nursing and enhance the stature of government nurses. Take steps to stop private practice by faculty of government teaching institutions by providing attractive salaries and incentives. 2. Enhance production of doctors, especially specialists and super specialists. While some steps have been taken, the system of Diplomate of National Board, DNB, and diplomas from CPS may be expanded. This will help to address the shortage of specialists in the country. Link at least 40% of district hospitals with medical colleges. Meet faculty shortages in new AIIMS with an active search strategy, visiting, adjunct faculty system, from India and abroad, and other methods. Create pathways for training of doctors in specialties and super specialties at private hospitals, certification, short courses, exchange programs, etc. Utilize extensively and incentivize district hospitals for formal DNB, CPS diploma, and informal specialty training of doctors and nurses. Provide opportunities for training in specialized, cutting-edge areas at the best centers in the world for faculty of National Institutions of Excellence, NIEs, AIIMS, PGMIR, JIPMER, NIMHANS, and of state medical colleges of repute. Create conditions to facilitate the import of doctors, especially those of Indian origin, working abroad. Consider deploying teachers from universities abroad as visiting professors at AIIMS, NIEs. An enabling framework for deployment of doctors and specialists from the private sector to government hospitals on a visiting, honorary basis may be developed and piloted. 3. Develop a comprehensive HRH policy in states. To enable the formulation of a comprehensive HRH policy in states for all categories, develop a model policy covering issues pertaining to staff recruitment, retention, transfer, incentive structures for posting in difficult areas including access to housing facilities, performance management and competency-based career tracks for professional advancement. 4. Skill and deploy non-physicians and other health providers. Develop plans for training a full range of allied health professionals such that it meets national requirements as well as creates a surplus for placements abroad. Create a cadre of primary healthcare practitioners by introducing a 3-year competency-based dynamic course for primary, community and family medicine. Place 150,000 skilled and independently certified MLPs to manage the health and wellness centers to be operationalized over the next 5 years. Explore some specific task-shifting opportunities like developing a cadre of nursing practitioners and physician assistants. 5. Generate data on HRH, track progress. Generate comprehensive real-time data on forecasting, production capacity and skill mix, as well as generate trends with respect to the key categories of HRH in the country. By 2019, put in place a system for tracking progress against the stipulated HRH requirements. Ensure meeting country commitments and targets under the global strategy on HRH. 6. Engage private sector for skilling and training HRH. Establish partnerships with medical device manufacturers as part of the Skill India and Make in India programs to identify skill gaps and design appropriate curricula for training programs. Partner with private hospitals, private medical practitioners to skill technicians, nursing and para-nursing as well as para-medical staff under the National Skill Development Corporation's Healthcare Sector Skill Council. Objectives. On the strong platform of Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana (PMJ). Attain a coverage of at least 75% of the population with publicly financed health insurance covering most secondary and tertiary care procedures by 2022-23. Reduce by 50% the proportion of households facing catastrophic health expenditure from the current levels. Current situation. There have been noteworthy strides over the past 2 decades in the quality of healthcare delivered to citizens and population health outcomes. Yet there is wide variation across states in the availability of resources, the status of state health programs, rural-urban differentials and governance capacity. Public health infrastructure in the country expanded considerably following the launch of the National Health Mission in 2005, however, there continues to be a shortfall in several areas. In 2015, the number of sub-centers, SCs, fell short of requirements by 20%, of primary health centers, PHCs by 22% and of community health centers, CHCs by 32% in rural India. The quality of public sector health facilities has also suffered because of shortage of personnel and lack of necessary supplies. Data from the National Sample Survey Organization's 71st round, January-June 2014, shows that only 28% and 21% of patients in rural and urban areas respectively use the outpatient care provided by health facilities in the public sector. The corresponding figures for the usage of inpatient care are 42% and 32%. The mixed health system, therefore, remains largely dominated by the private sector, which provides services at widely varying costs and quality levels. Public funding of health has been consistently low in India, approximately 1.3% of GDP. As a result, out-of-pocket expenditure (OOP) is 62% of the total expenditure on health. In 2007, the central government launched the Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana (RSBY) to cover hospital expenses of up to 30,000 Indian rupees for a family of 5 members living below the poverty line. Evaluation studies for RSBY have shown that while it did increase access to health care as well as non-medical health spending for the poor, it did not provide significant financial protection, perhaps due to the exclusion of spending on outpatient care, drugs and diagnostics. The decision to launch PMJ under Ayushman Bharat is a path-breaking step towards universal health coverage. It aims to cover 10.74 crore families at the bottom 2 quintiles with 5 lakh Indian rupees cover each year for secondary and tertiary care hospitalization. The PMJ will be implemented in alliance with state government schemes. As per the NSSO 71st round, out of the total OOP, 63.5% is on outpatient care. Of this, the largest expenditure, 71%, is on medicines. 30. Universal health coverage. It is paradoxical that although India is one of the largest suppliers of generic drugs to the world, a significant proportion of the country's population lacks access to essential medicines. During the last 4 years, however, the government has taken significant steps to enhance access to medicines, especially for the poor and middle classes. The prices 958 drugs have been capped along with the prices of cardiac stents and knee implants. The Pradhan Mantri Bharatiya Janaushadhi Pariyojana has been expanded from 99 functional stores in May 2014 to 4,024 functional stores in September 2018. Constraints. 1. There has been inadequate focus on comprehensive preventive care and primary care in the past. 2. The multiplicity of government-sponsored insurance schemes has resulted in the fragmentation of the risk pool. A sizable risk pool comprising low and high-risk individuals is imperative to ensure the viability and sustainability of insurance. 3. Since outpatient care, drugs and diagnostics are not covered under several government insurance schemes, people often delay seeking care until they are severely ill. 4. The coverage ceiling of RSBY is inadequate. 5. There is an acute shortage of motivated human resources for health, attributable at least partly to the poor incentives for government providers. 6. Access to drugs and medical devices at affordable prices is an essential ingredient of universal health coverage. According to estimates by the Central Drugs and Standards Control Organization, around 84% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients (APIs) for drugs manufactured in India are imported. This dependence on import of APIs has gone up more than fourfold between 2004 and 2013. 7. While the notification of medical devices rules is an important step, a clearly defined and comprehensive regulatory framework is required. Additionally, approximately 75% of the current demand for devices is met through imports. 8. The prices of diagnostic tests can vary widely across the country. For example, a lipid profile test can cost Rs. 90 in some cities, going up to Rs. 7,110 in others. Way forward. Recommendations pertaining to comprehensive primary health care, public health action, and human resources for health are covered in other chapters of this document. Other strategies for overcoming the constraints listed are described below. 1. Roll out PMJ. Establish the Ayushman Bharat National Health Agency at the central level and counterpart institutions at the state and district levels for management of the PMJ. Develop a robust, modular, scalable, and interoperable IT platform as per standards formulated by the National Digital Health Authority to enable paperless and cashless transactions under the scheme. Put in place mechanisms for fraud prevention, detection, and control as well as for grievance redressal. Design a comprehensive media and outreach strategy to increase awareness of the scheme among intended beneficiaries and other stakeholders. Institutionalize health technology assessment at the central and state levels to determine the service packages to be covered under PMJ in the future. Develop costing frameworks for determining accurate package rates for procedures. Develop standard treatment guidelines for priority conditions. Monitoring, evaluation, and research. Put in place data analytics systems to guide strategic purchasing of health services, forecasting, and generating policy inputs. Institutionalize a mechanism for undertaking independent audits of the scheme. Conduct research on the population level impact of the program, including financial protection, healthcare access, and health outcomes. 2. Galvanize health facilities in the public sector and engage the private sector. Provide greater autonomy to public hospitals to use claims money generated under PMJ to improve facilities, purchase the necessary drugs, tests, and provide performance-based incentives to staff. Strengthen district hospitals to conform to the Indian public health standards. Institutionalize ranking of district hospitals based on their performance on health indicators to foster competition and nudge them towards quality improvement. Introduce appropriate gatekeeping mechanisms for adoption by the proposed health and wellness centers. Reform the compensation system for professionals in public sector health facilities by shifting to a blended capitation mode of payment, part salary and part incentive based on achieving pre-agreed outcomes. Trigger private investments in rural, supply deficit areas by providing appropriate incentives for empaneling hospitals. 3. Ensure access to affordable drugs and medical devices. Institute a new drug price control order, DPCO, which ensures rational drug prices by reducing trade margins. Include consumables, in addition to drugs, in the DPCO to control undue profiteering. Finalize the national pharmaceutical policy to enable access to affordable medicines, promote the use of generic drugs, clamp down on unfair marketing practices, and give a boost to local manufacturing to reduce dependence on imports. Formulate and implement the e-pharmacy policy to facilitate online access to quality medicines in a cost-effective and timely manner. Review and iron out the challenges with the business model of Jan Aushadhi stores to ensure that they can function as self-sustaining entities and scale up rapidly across the country. Find the best pathways for scaling up and adapting the process of bulk procurement of drugs adopted in states like Tamil Nadu and Rajasthan. Boost domestic production of APIs by setting up 6 large API intermediate clusters as per the recommendations of the Kartoch Committee. Streamline regulatory processes, including providing a single window clearance mechanism to manufacturers. Introduce a separate act for medical devices as per global best practices, so that medical devices are regulated separately from pharmaceuticals. Formulate an appropriate pricing policy for medical devices and re-examine it periodically to ensure access to affordable devices for the population while also ensuring a sufficient return on investment. Develop the National 51st of Essential Medical Devices along the lines of the National 51st of Essential Medicines to improve patient care, increase the affordability of tests, improve the regulation and quality of diagnostic tests, and promote the rational use of diagnostics. 4. Strengthen health research capacity. Set up research consortia for diseases of high priority, including neglected tropical diseases and emerging infections along the lines of the India TB Research and Development Corporation. Identify at least 20 academic or research institutions at the regional level to act as hubs capable of training a minimum of 500 doctors every year. Ensure the presence of at least one model rural health research unit in every state. Cover the entire country with a network of viral research and diagnostic laboratories with a testing capacity of more than 15 lakh samples per year. Identify key research areas in traditional medicine and facilitate collaborative research with modern systems of medicine. 31. Nutrition. Objectives. Under Poshan Abhiyan, achieve the following outcomes by 2022-23, compared to the baseline of 2015-16, National Family Health Survey 4. Reduce the prevalence of stunting among children to 25% or less. Reduce the prevalence of underweight in children, 0 to 6 years, to 25% or less. Reduce the prevalence of anemia among young children, 6 to 59 months, to 43% or less. Reduce the prevalence of anemia among adolescent girls and women, 15 to 49 years to 38% or less. Current situation. Undernutrition is the prime risk factor in over 40% of under 5 child deaths. Children with undernutrition, anemia, and iodine deficiency will have low IQ scores and productivity as adults. A World Bank estimate indicates that reducing stunting can raise India's GDP by 4 to 11%. The prevalence of stunting declines by an estimated 3.2% for every 10% increase in income per capita. Similarly, a 10% rise in income per capita translates into a 7.4% fall in wasting. Thus, increasing per capita incomes through rapid and equitable economic growth is a necessary condition for improving nutrition outcomes. Although progress has been made, according to National Family Health Survey 4, NFHS 4, 2015-16, over one-third of all under 5 children are stunted, low height for age, every fifth child is wasted, low weight for height, and more than 50% of the children are anemic. Other emerging economies such as Brazil, stunting 6.1%, wasting 1.6%, China, stunting 6.8%, wasting 2.1%, and Mexico, stunting 13.6%, wasting 1.6%, fare far better on nutrition indicators compared to India. Ironically, at the same time, India is also grappling with the rising menace of overnutrition. Nearly one-fifth of India's adults are either obese or overweight as per NFHS 4 data, leading to an increased risk of diabetes and cardiovascular disorders. India can leverage its demographic dividend only if its citizens attain optimum levels of health, nutrition, and cognition. Recognizing this, the government launched the Poshan Abhiyan in March 2018 to provide police and programmatic guidance to high-burden states and districts, facilitate multi-sectoral planning, catalyze resource mobilization, and develop a surveillance system for nutrition. Constraints. 1. Multidimensional determinants of undernutrition are inadequately reflected in policymaking. Inadequate and poor quality food is an important, but not the only, cause of undernutrition. The underlying causes of malnutrition are multifaceted and rooted in economic and social factors like low levels of female literacy, lack of access to clean drinking water, and sanitation. At a more proximate level, nearly half of childhood undernutrition is attributable to illnesses, in particular, diarrhea, pneumonia and measles, and fetal growth restriction that results in low birth weight due to maternal nutrition, maternal health, pregnancy complications, and epigenetic factors. 2. Design limitations of the Integrated Child Development Services (ICDS). The design of the ICDS program has an important limitation: its focus on the first 1000 days of the child's life is inadequate. Over 80% of brain growth occurs during the first 1000 days of a child's life. This has a significant bearing on work capacity, productivity, and IQ in adulthood. Hence, nutrition programs in the country must accord the highest priority to this critical period of life. However, the ICDS program's most prominent activities are focused on the delivery of preschool education and hot-cooked meals as well as growth monitoring at Anganwadi centers for children between 3 and 6 years. Only 10% of children between 6 and 13 months received an adequate diet in 2015-16, NFHS 4. 3. ICDS program implementation. The ICDS program is beset with persistent challenges such as shortage of staff and field workers, poor monitoring, instances of food pilferage, and poor quality of services. Given the complex nature of the challenge, a multidimensional approach is a must. NITI Aayog has already detailed a possible action agenda in its National Nutrition Strategy, which needs to be urgently implemented. Way forward. 1. Address policy and governance issues. Provide greater flexibility to states under the Poshan Abhiyan to adapt programs for context-specific implementation and to experiment with innovative approaches to attain high coverage, quality, equity, and better outcomes. Establish an institutional mechanism outside the government to conduct independent annual audits of the program to achieve implementation improvements. 2. Ensure convergent action at all levels. Develop and implement annual Integrated Health, Nutrition and Swachh Bharat Mission (SBM) action plans for all districts under the Poshan Abhiyan. Ensure accountability of the local administration. Actively engage Panchayati Raj institutions, the public distribution system (PDS) and public health engineering departments for delivery of the action plans. Integrate health, SBM and nutrition services at the village level through the village health, sanitation and nutrition committees and by ensuring regular observance of village health, sanitation and nutrition days, VHS&Ds. Develop an implementation guide for integrated action for nutrition, a cookbook for district administrators. Establish a state-level convergence mechanism for nutrition under the Chief Secretary, Equivalent Officer and corresponding structures at the district and block levels. 3. Implement mission mode action in districts with a high burden of malnutrition under Poshan Abhiyan. Set up convergence mechanisms at the state, district and block levels, develop action plans specifying timelines, ensure sufficient budgetary allocation, strengthen monitoring systems, galvanize coordination, demonstrate change guided by annual surveys and intensively monitor implementation by NITI Aayog. 4. Refine program interventions focus on first 1000 days. As envisaged under the Poshan Abhiyan, devise a strategy for additional home-based contacts under the Home-Based Young Child Care Initiative with mothers having children in the age group of 3 months to 2 years to ensure compliance with infant and young child feeding practices as well as healthy behaviors. Mothers having a child with moderate or severe malnutrition for regular follow-up. These home visits should be conducted by accredited social health activists, a second auxiliary nurse midwife or community infant and young child feeding counselors. Replace the food-centric approach with more broad-based action that includes healthcare measures, special care of low birth weight infants and immunization, birth spacing, delaying age of marriage, exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months, and timely and adequate access to complementary food interventions. Focus on immunization including rotavirus and pneumococcal vaccines, target the vaccines preferentially to high-focus districts. Fortification. Consider mandatory fortification of staples produced in the organized sector and provide incentives to the industry to do so. Incorporate fortified food grains and double fortified salt within government programs such as ICDS, Midday Meal Scheme, and PDS. Explore approaches to biofortification of grains for micronutrient deficiencies. Research. Create a national nutrition surveillance system to track food quality and consumption patterns and nutritional deficiency profiles for all age groups in different regions. Conduct implementation research studies to inform improvements in the program. Key research areas include assessing the effectiveness of conditional cash transfers, vouchers in improving child nutrition, and the optimum formulation of supplementary nutrition for young children. Evaluate ICDS program in depth and suggest reforms for greater effectiveness. Track changes in birth weight and prematurity rates at the population level. Conduct long-term cohort studies on changes in body composition and early biomarkers of metabolic disorders. Review and redesign nutrition programs targeted at adolescent girls. Link these with pre-pregnancy interventions. Test approaches to prevent childhood and adult obesity at the population level. 5. Scale up nutrition MIS and strengthen monitoring mechanisms. Establish an IT-based real-time monitoring mechanism by rolling out the Common Application Software CAS developed by the Ministry of Women and Child Development on a countrywide basis. Undertake joint health and nutrition reviews in the field as a standard practice. Establish accountability with defined responsibilities at all levels, state, district and field. 6. Make Poshan Abhiyan a Jan Andolan. Make Poshan Abhiyan a community-led movement with adequate political backing. Develop behavioral change communication modules and ensure its use by all frontline workers, especially during VHSNDs. Emphasize individual as well as group counseling. 7. Galvanize the National Anemia Control Program. Implement the revised strategy for the Anemia Control Program based on evidence, incorporate home, community, school and facility level action, embed the strategy in the activities of the emerging health and wellness centers. Consider screen and treat as a part of the anemia control intervention package. 32. Gender. Objective. To create an enabling environment, sans institutional and structural barriers. To enhance the female labor force participation rate to at least 30% by 2022-23. Current situation. As highlighted in the Economic Survey 2018, a number of indicators that reflect the position of women in Indian society have moved in the right direction. Out of 17 indicators pertaining to women's agency, attitudes and outcomes, 14 have improved over time. On 7 of them, the improvement is at least on par with countries at similar levels of development as India. However, a declining female labor force participation rate, LFPR, despite increasing levels of education and declining fertility rates has emerged as a worrying trend. The current female LFPR is 23.7%, 26.7% in rural areas and 16.2% in urban areas. The declining trend is particularly strong in rural areas, where it has gone down from 49.7% in 2004-05 to 26.7% in 2015-16. At the All India level, women are confined mainly to the large, informal sector. It is estimated that if women did as much formal work as men, India would experience an additional 1.4% GDP growth. On average, 66% of women's work in India is unpaid, compared to 12% of men's. The government has taken some important initiatives to promote gender equality and welfare. These include the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao campaign, the Maternity Benefit Amendment Act 2017, Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana, Poshan Abhiyan and the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. Constraints. Constraints of workplace distance and flexibility in working hours, lack of availability of creches, safety etc., deter women from participating in economic activities. The absence of opportunities for part-time work and challenges surrounding re-entry into the workforce further worsen the situation. Women's work comprises mostly of invisible, unpaid work. Way forward. 1. Ensure gender-sensitive thinking for legislation and policies keeping in view the challenges faced by women including different life stages, single women, married women, young mothers and women re-entering the workforce after a break. Levels of education: illiterate, school educated, vocationally trained, college graduates, professionals. Geographic inequities: rural, urban, towns, peri-urban areas, remote locations, and marginalization: SC, ST, OBCs, etc. Special need groups such as single mothers, widows, homeless women, and women with disabilities, among others. 2. Strengthen legal frameworks to eliminate discrimination against women and promote gender equity. Craft legislations for women engaged in the unorganized sector to ensure at least a minimum set of gender-sensitive provisions such as access to privacy, minimum wages, maternity benefits, leave and grievance redressal. Ensure mechanisms for implementation of mandatory laws like the Maternity Benefit Act and the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act, including for workers in the informal sector. Create liberal laws, guidelines that encourage women to re-enter the workforce after a break. Develop and implement equal opportunity policies. Establish a set of norms for job advertisements and selection guidelines, availability of creche at workplace, grievance redressal, flexi hours, part-time work, maternity benefits, etc. for both the government and private sectors. Persuade the private sector, autonomous organizations and others to voluntarily inscribe a statement in job advertisements to the effect, "We are an equal opportunity organization and are fully committed to women's inclusion in our workforce," pending a formal policy. This can be accomplished in partnership with organizations like the Confederation of Indian Industry that have developed equal opportunity guidelines. Reward villages, districts with an equal child-sex ratio through information, education, and communication (IEC) campaigns. 3. Generate gender disaggregated data and rank states on key indicators. Establish a dedicated unit within the Ministry of Women and Child Development. The unit should focus on data gathering, conducting regular reviews with other ministries on explicitly defined gender targets, e.g. under the Poshan Abhiyan, reduce anemia rates among adolescent girls and women in the 15 to 49 years age group by at least one-third by 2022-23, ensuring optimum budgetary resources for women's welfare and evaluating the effectiveness of gender-based budgeting. In setting up this unit, lessons could be leveraged from similar institutional arrangements in countries like Rwanda, Gender Monitoring Office, and Finland, Gender Equality Unit. State government should establish similar units at the state level. Improve data systems to generate gender disaggregated data through the use of technology, geolocating information and generating maps in real time. Rank states on a set of reliable and comparable indicators that reflect changes in the status of women at the national and subnational levels over time. 4. Encourage women's participation in industry and enterprise. Develop sector, industry-specific targets for women's employment and incentivize their implementation by firms. Create policies and guidelines, on priority, to enhance access to credit by women entrepreneurs, provide facilitated credit access pathways for single women, women's self-help groups, guilds, cooperatives, handicapped women, and SC/ST women. Consider incentivizing sectors, companies that have over 30% women workers by providing tax benefits. 5. Improve asset ownership and economic security. Prioritize groups of women farmers seeking to lease land, water bodies, etc. at the village panchayat level. Encourage joint registration with spouses, sole registration of land in the name of the woman through registration fee and stamp duty concessions through special drives, awareness campaigns. Recognize and secure women's rights over common property resources like irrigation systems, fishing grounds, forests and water. 6. Create enabling conditions for women engaged in agriculture. Ensure 50% membership of women farmers in farmer-producer organizations, FPOs. Consider creating a separate budget to bear the registration, processing fee for the registration of women FPOs. Specially focus on skill development among women, particularly for activities such as soil conservation, social forestry, dairy development, horticulture, organic farming, and livestock rearing, including animal husbandry, poultry, fisheries. Target agricultural extension services to women farmers as well, not just males. 7. Enhance women's skills and leveraging ability. Consider extending the postgraduate Indira Gandhi Scholarship for Single Girl Child Scheme to families with 2 girl children. Provide relatively higher financial incentives for girls' education until class 12 to curb the higher dropout rate among girls and raise the average age at marriage by keeping girls in schools. Promote skill development among women in non-traditional work such as electronic technicians, electricians, plumbers, taxi drivers, etc. Organize women into professional groups, guilds to improve their bargaining power. Use platforms like Digital India, to create apps for the guilds 2, for marketing and branding purposes, and 3, to establish linkages with corporates, markets and consumers. 8. Ensure mobility, security and safety for all women. Provide affordable housing, residential hostels and gender-friendly facilities in upcoming towns and big cities. Improve rural connectivity and public transport systems. Ensure gender-sensitive, rights-based and time-bound trials as well as disposal of cases pertaining to violence against women. Strengthen the standard operating protocols for tackling crimes against women, including new forms of violence such as cybercrimes. Introduce training, including refresher training, on women-specific issues and laws for all ranks and categories of police personnel, health practitioners, protection officers, legal service authorities, judicial authorities as well as other stakeholders who interact with survivors of violence, especially in remote areas. 33. Senior citizens, persons with disability and transgender persons. Senior citizens. Objective: to ensure a life of dignity, social security and safety for senior citizens, enabling them to actively participate in economic development in the nation-building process. Current situation. As per Census 2011, India had 10.38 crore senior citizens, 60 years and above. Of this, 3.8 crore were above the age of 80 years. The share of the elderly in the population increased from 5.6% in 1961 to 8.6% in 2011. It is expected to increase to 20% of the population by 2050. Senior citizens face several challenges. They are prone to chronic illness. However, access to institutional support and specialized medical care is skewed, with most of these concentrated in urban areas and out of reach for the large number of the elderly who live in rural areas. The government has taken steps to provide various tax benefits to senior citizens, including raising the basic exemption limit from 2.5 lakh Indian rupees to INR 3 lakh, increasing the deduction for health insurance from 15,000 Indian rupees to 50,000 Indian rupees, as well as raising the deduction for bank interest from 10,000 Indian rupees to 50,000 Indian rupees. The Pradhan Mantri Vaya Vandana Yojana has also been launched to provide a maximum pension of 10,000 Indian rupees per month with an investment of 15 lakh Indian rupees. Constraints. Poverty and lack of income security makes it difficult to meet even basic needs like food, housing, healthcare, etc. for a large number of senior citizens. There has been a rapid emergence of nuclear families and aging parents living away from their children. There is a shortage of well-trained personnel for delivering caregiving and other services for senior citizens. Way forward. Given the changing demographics and socio-economic needs, revise the national policy for older persons. The policy should cover housing, income security, pension, and access to healthcare. It should also emphasize the concept of aging in place or aging in own home. Bring schemes pertaining to senior citizens under the restructured Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities and Senior Citizens. An integrated implementation and monitoring plan should be developed in consultation with stakeholders, and the plan should be reviewed periodically by an interministerial committee headed by the Secretary. Bring the necessary amendments to the Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Older Persons Act 2007, currently under consideration by the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment (MOSIA). Consider establishing an old age home in every district by 2020 and ensure adherence to minimum quality standards. Expand the national program for health care of the elderly to all districts following a comprehensive evaluation of the scheme. Prioritize supply of aids and assistive devices for senior citizens below the poverty line. Ensure a barrier-free environment in all public buildings, parks, etc. for the elderly. Strengthen the National Institute of Social Defense and regional resource training centers to meet the rising demand for quality caregivers. Persons with disabilities. Objective: to create opportunities for and empower persons with disabilities (PWDs) to realize their potential and live a productive and dignified life. Current situation. According to Census 2011, India had 2.68 crore PWDs, constituting approximately 2.21% of the total population. India enacted the first legislation for PWDs in 1995, which has been replaced by the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016. The Act is harmonized with the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities 2006 and lists 21 categories of disabilities. India also formulated its first national policy for PWDs in 2006. PWDs face several challenges. According to the Census 2011, 27% of disabled children between the ages of 5 to 19 had never attended an educational institution. Only 50% of the disabled population in the 15 to 59 years category was working. They also tend to be stigmatized and discriminated against and lag behind others with respect to access to basic infrastructure and opportunities for economic participation. The Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities (DPONS) has the overall responsibility for implementing several schemes. However, utilization of funds has been a challenge. Constraints. Accurate identification of the disabled population in India has been a major problem. People tend to hide their disability to avoid facing social stigma. Beyond census statistics, there is a lack of appropriately disaggregated data for PWDs generated at regular intervals. In India, the last survey on disability was carried out by the National Sample Survey Organization in 2002. Disability-related issues require multi-sectoral action, which has been difficult to achieve in practice. The National Institute's NIST Composite Regional Centers, CRCs, District Disability Rehabilitation Centers, DDRCs, and the Rehabilitation Council of India, RCI, need special attention to ensure adequacy of resources and infrastructure as well as effective monitoring of schemes. Way forward. 1. Generate data on PWDs. Disaggregate data by sex, age, and socioeconomic status in order to identify reliable and regular trends for informed policymaking. Feed data collected into an electronic database for PWDs at the national level and link with the unique disability identity card. 2. Bolster the institutional architecture and policy framework. Reorient the DEPWD to focus on data collection, identifying gaps, and evaluating the impact of various schemes, instead of focusing on the implementation of a large number of schemes with small budget allocations. Bring programs focused on improving specific issues related to PWDs under the purview of the relevant line ministries. Earmark at least 5% of the total budget of social sector ministries for schemes for PWDs. 3. Education. Include courses in disability etiquette and success stories on PWDs in the mainstream curriculum to change attitudes towards PWDs. Provide special education training in teacher training courses. Enhance scholarships, fellowships to students with disabilities. Make schools more inclusive by addressing the barriers related to the physical environment, e.g., accessible toilets, admission procedures, as well as curriculum design. Ensure that schools have at least one section of every class accessible under the Universal Design Guidelines. Foster partnerships between the Ministry of Human Resource Development and MOSU to promote synergies among inclusive and special schools in the government and private sectors. Develop indicators for rating schools on inclusivity. Include disabled-friendly sports, cultural and technical programs in schools and colleges. 4. Healthcare. Provide aids and assistive devices to at least 3 lakh beneficiaries every year. Conduct cochlear implant and corrective surgeries for 5,000 children annually. Establish 20 state spinal injury centers. Set up early diagnostic and intervention centers at the district level to screen children and identify special needs or requirements for assistive devices at an early age. 5. Employment and income generation. Integrate the skill development scheme with schemes of the National Trust, e.g., Disha, to address the needs of the intellectually disabled. Establish dedicated training centers for PWDs to meet the requirements of the private sector. Integrate initiatives of various ministries to provide skill training, soft loans, and entrepreneurship opportunities to PWDs. 6. Institutional strengthening. Upgrade NIS into centers of excellence. Establish 50 CRCs in states having a population of more than 6 crore. Provide comprehensive rehabilitation services to 50 lakh PWDs through the NIS and CRCs. Enroll 17,000 rehabilitation personnel in various long-term courses offered by NIS and CRCs every year. 7. Accessibility and inclusivity. Make the Accessible India campaign a mass movement with the involvement of citizens and civil society. Conduct awareness programs in collaborations with DDRCs, CRCs, and vocational rehabilitation centers, VRCs. Incorporate universal design and accessibility standards in engineering, architecture, and computer science studies. Introduce the requirement of an accessibility certificate for all future commercial enterprises above a specified size in order to be awarded a completion certificate. Extend the DDRC schemes to all districts. Construct residential homes for disabled adults whose parents are no longer alive. Adopt a life cycle approach for community-based rehabilitation in mission mode. Transgender persons. Objective. To ensure a life of dignity, social security, and safety for transgender persons, enabling them to actively participate in economic development and the nation-building process. Current situation. As per Census 2011, India had 4.87 lakh transgender persons. The transgender community is among one of the most marginalized communities in the country. Extreme social exclusion diminishes their self-esteem and is a violation of their human rights. An expert committee constituted under the direction of the Honorable Supreme Court recommended several measures to ameliorate their problems. Following that, the scheme for transgender persons was launched. Constraints. Parliament is yet to pass the Rights of Transgender Persons Bill 2016. Accurate identification of transgender persons is a major challenge. The implementation of the scheme for transgender persons is suboptimal. Way forward. Provide for identification of transgender persons in all government and non-government records by introducing a separate column to include the third gender. Sensitize communities towards the challenges and needs of transgender persons. Create a forum for the active participation of transgender persons at all levels of governance. Put in place institutional mechanisms to effectively implement programs for transgender persons. Determine the number of transgender persons and map their socioeconomic status to design customized policy interventions. This enumeration and mapping can be carried out by the MOSU along with the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Mandate the provision of housing and community services to accommodate at least 50% of transgender persons. Formulate and implement a scheme for establishing residential schools in all districts for transgender persons. Design a scheme for providing skill and employability training to transgender persons to integrate them with mainstream society. Launch a centrally sponsored scheme to provide pension to transgender persons above 60 years. Ensure Aadhaar and direct benefit transfer-based implementation and monitoring of social security programs. Consider creating a fund at the national level for supporting states that have mapped out the needs of and designed the necessary policy interventions for various vulnerable sections of society, including persons with disabilities, senior citizens, and transgender persons in line with the relevant legislations. 34. Scheduled castes, SCs, scheduled tribes, STs, other backward classes, OBCs, other tribal groups and minorities, SCs, STs, OBCs, the notified tribes, DNTs, nomadic tribes, NTs, and semi-nomadic tribes, SNTs. Objective: to accelerate the socio-economic development of SCs, STs, OBCs, Safai Karamcharis as well as DNTs, NTs and SNTs through focused affirmative action so as to bring them on par with the rest of the population as far as key human development indicators are concerned. Current situation. High incidence of poverty and low educational attainment are the two major challenges faced by weaker sections in India. Other challenges include high levels of malnutrition and limited opportunities for meaningful economic engagement. Among the weaker sections, Safari Karmasharis constitute one of the most deprived groups. Other groups that require special attention include the particularly vulnerable tribal groups, PVTGs, among the STs as well as performing artists and those engaged in begging among the DNTs, NTs and SNTs. Research on SCs and STs suggests that historical inequities among the different segments of India's workforce have diminished over the last 3 decades. The gaps have narrowed most markedly for the youngest cohorts in the workforce, especially in the domain of education. However, there is still a long way to go before the inequities are bridged completely. Constraints. Problems of isolation, exclusion, and occupational subjugation are major obstacles to mainstreaming these social groups in the socio-economic development of the country. Governance, including lack of inter-ministerial convergence and suboptimal targeting of beneficiaries, is another major issue. Resources are distributed thinly among a large number of schemes, especially under the Scheduled Caste Subplan, SCSP, and Tribal Subplan, TSP, instead of among a few targeted schemes. There is limited awareness about the schemes, resulting in leakages and denial of benefits. Mainstreaming these groups has also been hampered by the inability to incorporate specific cultural and social requirements of SC, ST groups while designing interventions. Way forward. 1. Institutional and programmatic strengthening. Undertake a baseline survey and target remote and tribal habitations for implementation of various development programs. Design schemes that are tailored to and narrowly focus on the challenges and needs of specific communities. Institutionalize social audits for assessing the impact of these schemes on the basis of quantifiable benefits to targeted households. Establish the National Institute for Tribal Research. Earmark funds under all developmental programs for DNTs, SNTs, and NTs. Put in place mechanisms to regularly monitor the implementation of legislations like the Panchayat Extension to Scheduled Areas Act and Forest Rights Act, FRA 2006. Set up a permanent commission for NTs, DNTs, and SNTs along the lines of the National Commission for SCs and STs. 2. Education. Establish residential schools in uncovered blocks, districts with facilities for vocational training. Define and ensure adherence to quality parameters for existing and new residential schools. Increase the number of scholarships provided under the pre-matric, post-matric, national fellowship and national overseas scholarship schemes for SCs, STs and OBCs. 3. Economic empowerment. Expand the Stand Up India scheme to include uncovered social groups like OBCs, DNTs, NTs and SNTs. Extend venture capital funds and credit guarantee schemes for covering STs, OBCs, DNTs, NTs and SNTs. Cover a larger number of beneficiaries under various finance and development schemes with an annual increase of 10% every year. Provide concessional loans for promoting entrepreneurship among OBCs by doubling the number of beneficiaries covered under the National Backward Classes Finance and Development Corporation by 2022-23. Encourage indigenous tribal medicine alongside other systems to create additional livelihood opportunities. Establish contact points with potential employers along with pre-job training sessions for youth. 4. Miscellaneous. Ensure universal coverage of DNT, SNT and NT populations for BPL and Aadhaar cards. Prepare a vulnerability index and vulnerability intervention index for PVTGs based on the methodology suggested by the National Institute of Rural Development and Panchayati Raj, Hyderabad. These indices will be useful for assessing the socioeconomic disparities between PVTGs and other social groups and designing policy interventions accordingly. Extend habitat rights to PVTGs within the FRA framework, as has been done for the Baga tribe of Dindori district, Madhya Pradesh. Provide project-based funding under Special Central Assistance (SCA) to SCSP and to TSP, especially in Gram Panchayats blocks where the population of SCs, STs is more than 25%. Prioritize vulnerable groups like tribal children under the National Nutrition Mission through tag tracking and additional home visits for underweight children conducted by frontline workers. Empower marginalized communities by promoting community-owned radio stations. Promote habitations along the lines of Samasthapuram in Tamil Nadu where people belonging to all communities live together. Minorities. Objective. To bridge the gap between minority communities and the rest of the population with respect to various socio-economic and human development indicators through affirmative action. Current situation. As per Census 2011, of the total population of 121 crore, Hindus constitute 79.8%, Muslims 14.2%, Christians 2.3%, Sikhs 1.7%, Buddhists 0.7% and Jains 0.4%. While improvements have been made on several fronts, religious minorities lag behind on certain indicators pertaining to educational attainment, gender equality and workforce participation. Disaggregated data from a survey highlighted that the highest proportion of out-of-school children in the country belong to Muslim communities, 4.43%, followed by Hindus, 2.73%, Christians, 1.52%, and others, 1.26%. Data from the 68th round of the National Sample Survey revealed that the proportion of households in urban India with casual labor and self-employment as the dominant income source was the highest among Muslims at 15% and 50% respectively. The workforce participation rate among Muslims, Sikhs and Jains was lower than the national average according to Census 2011. Constraints. Data on development indicators for minorities is not generated at regular intervals. Some minority communities are also included under SCs, STs and OBCs, which could result in the duplication of schemes for the same set of beneficiaries. Awareness levels and demand for programs being implemented for the benefit of minorities are limited. Way forward. 1. Institutional restructuring. West. The primary responsibility for a number of schemes currently being implemented by the Ministry of Minority Affairs, MoMA, with the relevant line ministries. MoMA should be involved with the finalization of physical and financial targets by the line ministries. Increase the emphasis of the MoMA on data collection and analysis, identifying gap areas, online monitoring of the PM's 15-point program, evaluating the impact of various schemes and popularizing schemes in local languages using social media. 2. Education. Enhance pre-matric scholarships, post-matric scholarships, merit-cum-means scholarships, Maulana Azad National Fellowships and National Overseas Scholarships with a 15% increase annually from 2019-20. Increase the number of scholarships for girls from minority communities by 10% every year. Ensure that girls who pass out from Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalayas can continue their education after completing Class 8. Provide access to public transport in the form of buses and cycles or vouchers for meeting private transport costs to raise enrollment rates among girls from vulnerable communities. Train at least 100,000 minority women under the Nai Roshni scheme every year. 3. Economic empowerment. Identify the poorest among the minority communities through the socio-economic caste census data for proper targeting of various schemes. By 2022-23, provide integrated education and livelihood programs to 100,000 beneficiaries under the Nai Manzil program. Train at least 350,000 beneficiaries during the 5-year period under Sikho or Kamao. Achieve a 15% increase per annum in loans to vulnerable sections through the use of alternative channels like regional rural banks. Put out job advertisements in Urdu and local language newspapers as well as through other locally appropriate channels.